Tell me your story, Zach.
Started out fishing on a dam that the guy has on his property, and every time I went out there, you know, I'd be standing, either side of this deep hole that had my saw guy in it, and I had deer cross in front of it, and I half the time I would see deer walking in, they'd be on the riverbank,
Does, bucks.
a little bit of both. It just kind of depended, but I think out of the 6 times I fished there before, I got permission from the landowner to hunt out there. I think there was one hunt that I didn't, or one fishing trip that I didn't see a deer, and two of the times was walking in, I scared up, good quality deer, 130s to 150s. For me at that time, that was, a good dream deer.
How do you go about, you obviously got permission. How did you go? You go talk to the guy, you look on Onyx to see who owned it. What do you do?
Uh, Went on Onyx, seen where property lines were to make sure, the guy that his house was right there, make sure, figure out if that was him or not, and figured out that was who he was. So I went and talked to him, worked my sweet charm, offered a lot of work and stuff that's gonna, it's just not money. It's being a good human, offering up things that most people aren't willing to give to people. He said he'd get back with me. It was a couple weeks of text message here, text message there, phone call. After about 3 weeks, he came to me, called me, and said, "Hey, I'll let you out there. You get 1 week,
7 days?
7 days." And we came up with our date that worked for him to let me out there, and so I knew I had 7 days out there. He showed me property lines. He's not a big deer hunter himself, so he kind of just told me, yeah, the deer hang out here. Sometimes I see them there, I'll see them here, and me fishing the area, I've already seen a handful of deer and turkeys, and I figured out, kind of where they moved, and I was like, well, kind of figured out my spot that I wanted to set up at, and hope to get some doe is really what I was after. He told me there was a buck out there that was 14 to 16 points, and that was the big one. He said they had a couple other nice ones on the property that they see here and there, not every day, but they're there.
What did I tell you when you told me there was a 14 to 16 point run around out there? I told you usually people are making shit up when they say it's a 14 point.
Usually, yeah, usually they are making it up when they say it's 14 to 16.
Everyone says there's a 14 point running around. So did you see pictures of this deer?
No, I did not see pictures of it. I had, no pictures of what was out there at all. I went out there, set up my stuff. I put up a blind, bought a blind, set it up.
Did you only use the blind?
Yeah, yep. I only put up a blind just because I was like, well, I only have 7 days out here. So went out Sunday morning. Had a little bit of frost on the ground, and I seen my first deer that I seen was a good, healthy looking 2.5-year-old 8 point basket rack. Seen him run around, and I seen him out in front of me first, and he disappeared. And about a half hour later, I heard something splashing in the water, and I looked back, and it was him again.
Would have you shot that buck if he give you an opportunity?
I thought about it. He actually, after he circled back around, he came back out on me, and this time he was at 40 yards. I left my rangefinder back at the car, and I sat there and thought about it. I'm like, I could get him, but I thought about the other guy that hunts, and I was like, this would be a good deer to let come to next year. He'd be a really good looking buck next year, so I just decided to let him go.
What days did you hunt? You hunted Monday, Tuesday?
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
So you hunted every day.
I ended up hunting 9 times on the 7 days that I could. So the week went by, and it was evening hunts. I'd usually get out there anywhere between 3:45 and 4:15. And this time I was, a lot more ready, trying to fill my doe management tag that expired next week, the end of November. That next day we were out and I was walking out, parked my car kind of by their house and was walking out and got 40 yards down the trail and there's a good bedding spot. The landowner had told me previously that some deer bed on that one, and from fishing trips, I knew they went on that spot. I jumped up this deer that I just freaked out. I had never seen a buck that size.
Do you think it was the one you killed?
Yeah, I mean, just real tall deer. I knew that was him when he came up. I remember seeing the back of him. I was 40 yards away, pretty open through the woods.
You thought that was the so-called 14 to 16 point.
Yeah, I figured it had to be him. I mean, he was just massive. Yeah, he jumped up and I didn't get the best look, but I knew he was a quote stud buck and jumped him up and he went across the river and I was like, okay, get back out to my spot and got set up and, hour went by or so and, hadn't seen anything and I was like, crap, I just spooked one of the biggest deer I was ever going to see. Well, lo and behold, look over, deer's coming just out of the woods line across the field from me, about 120 yards. Walks out 20 yards into the field, so he's about 100 yards from me, and it's just a stud. He's kind of
Same buck?
pretty certain he's the same buck. I can't guarantee. It was getting closer to evening. My phone camera sucks, but I got a video of him. He was looking for a doe. He was looking for the same thing I was out there hunting, a doe. It ended up getting dark. Had another hunt that I didn't see anything.
So this is the morning you shot the deer?
Yes, this is the morning I put him down. While getting out, I woke up. I was up late, being Friday night, shooting, hanging out. I just kept shooting all night long. I couldn't quite stop. I bet I shot 150 arrows that night. And something told me, take it out. Well, I got up, woke up, and I started driving, get out there a little bit early. And needed to get gas, so I stopped and got gas. And I was looking at the time, and I'm like, man, I'm going to be crunch time now. Well, I got out there, got all my gear on, threw my stuff on, grabbed my bow, grabbed my release, made sure, I had my release in my hand because you never know when a deer's going to jump out. And I knew I was pushing shooting light. I had pulled into the driveway with a minute until shooting light.
So you basically knew, you were walking to your stand and it was legal time already. It was plenty daylight.
Yeah, by time
minus the fog that was in your way.
Yeah, by the time I got everything through on, it was youth season, so my big coat that I had, it was a pain in the butt to get my orange on because my vest is real small for me. Got that on, that took me probably 45 seconds. It was a pain. It sucked. I was like, I hate wearing this tight vest and big clothing, and I still got about 3/4 of a mile walk. And I'm walking along and I get up, I'm following he's got a tractor path, I'm following that to get out to my spot, and I just look over, kind of you're walking through and you can see stuff, but, you can't tell if it's farther away. Well, I just seen something out in the field, and there's a little tree line.
How far could you see in the fog? Because
maybe 50 yards.
Because we were hunting and we could see about 30 yards.
Yeah, I could see a little bit better than what you guys could based off of the videos I seen of you guys. But I just seen something, there's a tree line there, and I don't know the woods by heart. I know how to get to my spot, but I don't know every stump that looks like a deer and all this stuff. And I just kind of seen something, and that night or that morning, I could just walk quiet as could be. I didn't make a noise. And I seen that shape, and I was like, man, that looks like a deer moving my way. And, I'm kind of looking at it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a deer, definitely a good-sized deer, and it's walking down this tree line that I'm on the other side of. And you know, this tree line, it's like a low spot, it's a ditch. Um, it's got trees on the one side of it, and I I seen it. And I was like, okay, that is definitely 100% a deer, and it is definitely, you know, slow walking, trotting type deal towards me. And about right at the time that I seen him, you know, I was looking around. I'm like, oh crap, I gotta find a shooting lane to shoot through this stuff. And I was just reaching for my rangefinder. I found a spot that was about a 2 foot circle, you know, something about like that. And I was like, that's my only shot. This deer walks by and doesn't stop there. I'm not getting a shot. Not a good one, at least. And I don't take bad shots. I won't do it. I'd rather miss, not shoot, and than injure a deer. So I found my spot. It was straight across from me. Took my rangefinder, hit the field, like the pathway, kind of guessing where he might walk. And there's too many limbs in the way. I just couldn't get a reading, and I was like, crap. So I slipped that back down, drew back on him. He sped up his walk, and I hear boom. A youth just shot, you know, in the distance. So I'm drawn back on it, on, you know, this opening.
So how far was the deer away when you drew back?
He was about 40, 40-ish yards, 40, 45. You know, it was kind of hard to judge being in the fog that he was in. You know, where I was standing, I could look 50, 60 yards down and see. But I was also in the woods line still. So in the woods it wasn't foggy, but outside of it, it was like a thick blanket. And he came in, and I was just getting, you know, I was drawn back looking through my sight, and I decided to go with my 30-yard pin, and I was going to aim at the heart. And I figured if he was at 20 yards, I'll hit high and hit him in the lungs. Because I didn't know exactly where he was at. I was like, this is my best option for me to aim at 30. And if he's not at 30 and I don't hit the heart, I'm going to hit him up in the lungs. And he came right to my window, and I had my mouth cracked open to go at him, and he had just froze right there in front of me. I mean, I had to move my crosshairs or my pin about 3 inches over.
You just got extremely lucky.
Yeah, he stopped. I mean, I could have probably let that arrow fly and probably put a good kill shot on him. And, you know, so this is already just the luckiest thing I've ever seen.
Did you know how big the deer was?
No.
I mean, you knew he was big, but you didn't know he was this big.
I knew the body was big. When he came coming in up until about 25 yards, that's when I seen antlers. And I could tell that he was bigger than anything I've had ever shot.
So you're shooting this deer no matter what.
Yeah.
You're probably not, you're not concerned about how big his rack is. You already made up your mind you're shooting this deer.
I told everyone I was going to shoot a big one this year.
You did.
Yes, I did. He sensed something wasn't right. And I mean, I'm just standing in my camo, you know, this big bright orange vest on, you know, no coloration pattern break in the color of the orange. And we're 20, 25 yards away from each other.
How long were you drew back on him?
I had my bow drawn back for about 45 seconds.
That's a long time.
It was decently long. I wasn't quite thinking about that at the time. You know, I probably felt like Iron Man or something. Just the adrenaline going through me after I seen. You know, I had that mindset on me. I was going to shoot one with a compound bow, and I seen the rack, and I just ignored the rack. I was like, don't look at the rack, look at the vitals. By the time he stopped to the time I shot was maybe 7-8 seconds. You know, I clicked that release, heard that thwack. You know, when that arrow hits a deer, there's that certain thud it makes. I watched him as far as I could. He was probably 40 yards away from me.
Have you ever killed a deer with your compound?
I shot a doe 5 years ago.
So this deer ran off. Did you watch it fall over, or did it disappear in the fog?
Right where he was standing and came from was a straight line across the field of fog. on the right hand side, you know, it was kind of open. I could see 120 yards down.
So the deer ran off and disappeared.
Yeah, he was about 40, 50 yards away. I lost him behind a tree. Me being me, just kind of freaking out that I just shot this deer. I walked down, jumped up. So basically, I'm standing right where I had just shot this deer. And I'm standing there, and, seconds are going by like slower than all slow can get. I mean, I swear I'm trapped in space, in slow motion. My mind's running a million miles a minute. I'm watching him. He ran, he's out at 80, 90 yards already. And I'm like, why has he not shown me any sign of being shot yet? I had watched him, no wobbles in his trot, nothing. And he kind of slows down, and he's facing away from me, so I'm looking at his rear end, and his tail just keeps wagging, kind of like he had a happy wag to him.
The death wag.
And all of a sudden, his head just dropped. His body stayed straight, but his head dropped. And then he got up and he just spread his legs as wide as he could, basically doing deer splits. And he just stood there, and his head just stayed down. He picked his head back up, and he kind of looked. He looked to his left side, which was back towards where I was standing. And all of a sudden, he, sidestepped real fast, and now he's broadside at me, 85 yards or so. Drops his head down again, and it looks like he just bedded down. He just kind of gracefully laid down, fell over, no hard thump or anything. And I just seen his legs kick out sideways, and I was like, he's down.
You knew he was done.
I knew he was done.
You just watched the biggest deer of your life fall over dead at 90 yards.
Yep. And it was 90 yards through an open field. I have every step he made burnt into my memory. I could see this rack 100 yards away. At this time, it's about 7:07. I shot him I looked at my phone right after I crossed. 7:06, so I shot at 7:05. I look at it as 7:07. I'm like, okay. When I looked at him laying in this grass, I figure the grass is about 8 to 10 inch tall grass, maybe 12. Just kind of this field. And I can still see the full side of his head and one side of his rack. This other rack was holding his head up above this grass, and I thought, oh my, I am shaking. I'm just going through the roof right now. And I'm still standing back, where I shot him standing at. And I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? We'll just give him a couple more minutes. I went out in the field. I'm looking for blood, looking for my arrow. I don't know where that arrow went through. Being ground level, that arrow could have went through and went down, way out in the field, left, right.
Could be in the deer for all you know.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. I can't find anything. Couldn't find any blood, nothing.
So you're walking up on this deer.
Walking up on him, he's been down for 10 minutes or so. First thing I do, snap 2 pictures of him, and I'm like, oh my God, I just shot this thing.
Did you grab his rack at all?
Not yet.
Didn't even grab his rack.
Other than poking him, I haven't even touched him. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just shot this thing. Waited a little bit, trying to collect myself because I'm so excited.
I seen you hours later, and you were speechless.
Started counting points, and I had 10 on one side, and I was like, oh my. Counted 9 on the other side, and I was like, that's 19. There was a couple other ones that were iffy. At this point, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just shot a 19-point plus buck. That is a buck of a lifetime. You don't hear of 19-pointers getting shot ever.
That's a lot bigger than what the landowner told you, 14 to 16.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And
so you showed, some family friends and everything?
Yeah, I showed my grandma and grandpa, my dad's buddy, had some guys with the pictures and stuff. I seen anything from 160 plus all the way up to 187 and 3/8, I think, was one of the guys' guess. And, I'm just in shock showing these people. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, this thing's huge.
So you brought him over in the bed of your pickup truck, and I ran outside and I opened your tailgate. I was speechless.
Yeah, that's truly when it hit me, when I realized you were speechless.
I mean,
Started.
me and Nick have seen a lot of deer. We've never seen anything like that. Not in 8 or 10 years.
Yeah, I knew right then that's when I truly, I put a monster down, and we started, looking at it.
We were taking guesses, and,
Yeah,
you
we
know,
started taking guesses,
our guesses were 30 inches off.
yeah, I was thinking some of the guys that told me, I was like, I just gotta take these guys' words for it. I was like, I have no idea what I had just shot. 19 points. I was like, yeah, that's impressive. Having a 17 and 3/8 inch spread. You know, I was like, man, he's got tines that are 14, 15 inches tall. I was like, this thing's, impressive. We start scoring.
So we put the tape on him. We had to put the tape on him. We couldn't. I mean, we didn't have much time. We rough scored him,
Yeah.
and we started adding up numbers.
Well, we hit 187. We hadn't even measured his spread yet. 190 some, green inches, and we were like,
We thought it was going to break 200, if we had it officially measured, right?
yeah,
If you had it officially measured.
yeah. And that's when um, pointed out we hadn't measured spread yet. And we're like, oh my God.
We didn't even measure the spread. We just started jumping for joy.
Yeah, I mean,
We knew it was way past 200.
yeah, we knew it was going to crush 200.
So we got him at approximately 216 inches, and then we remeasured him later. We think he's going to net around 208, potentially somewhere in there. That's not official. That's a average hunter official score, but 216 and 5/8 it's a big deer.
It's a big deer, and I mean, he's going to shrink a little bit, but I don't think he's going to shrink under 200.
Nope.
Impossible. So
All right. We got anything else you want to say?
it's something that you're never going to forget, and it's going to stick with me the rest of my life.
Forgot to ask, where did you end up shooting it? You double lung the deer?
Yes, he was kind of quartered a little bit, not a lot, but just a hair, and it ended up being a double lung.
Awesome.
Truly a blessing to have a deer like that walk in front of you.
Let alone watch him fall.
Yeah. Yeah, that was probably the coolest thing I've ever seen.
You gonna kill a bigger one?
We all hope one day to get one bigger, but I've been told by many, many experienced guys that have 30, 40 years of seeing deer, taxidermy wise, and stuff like that. They've all said I've shot a deer of a lifetime, and the most experienced one has said I shot a deer of 10 lifetimes. So, as cool as it would be to shoot a bigger one, I don't know if it'll happen in this area. So, we can only hope that next year brings another stud like this.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.